This video is sponsored by Craftsy. Hey everyone, welcome back to Reissued. If you're new here, my name is Andrew. Do you ever have one of those projects that's been hanging around in the background, unfinished, and just nagging at you for an uncomfortably long period of time? Maybe you stopped working on it because you weren't really sure how to proceed, or you weren't really liking how it was coming out, or because the universe was conspiring against you, or all of the above. You know what I'm talking about. Raise your hand in the comments if you have a project like this. I'm gonna raise my hand because I definitely have one, and that is the deconstructed leather chair situation that's been ongoing in my home for almost 3 years. I found this cool chair on the street, I found this cool biker leather jacket at Goodwill, and I thought that I could put the two together into kind of a deconstructed badass biker jacket feel. I've tried making this video and completing this jacket twice over the last 2 years, but now I am happy to announce that that project is finally done. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing my process with you and also giving you a bit of a flashback and reissue time. If you're a regular here on my channel, you might appreciate this. We're going to flash back before the porch makeover, before this room's makeover. And if you're new here on my channel, this will give you a window into how crazy I am. Be sure you stay tuned to the end of this video to let me know if this project was worth all the pain and suffering and drama. And while you're at it, go ahead and like this video if you like this video, and subscribe for more crazy upcycled trash to treasure content. Needless to say, I'm very excited to show you this project and how it turned out, so let's jump on it. Alright, so let me start by telling you a little about my vision for this project. I found this green chair on the street in my neighborhood. It had kind of a cool, almost wingback shape, but it was stacked up with tile on top of it, so it was not in the best condition. I knew that I would have to take off all of the upholstery, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity to experiment with this kind of deconstructed look that I was seeing. Some of the chairs that I was looking at were totally raw and exposed on the back where you saw all of the upholstery work, and then others were these kind of wood frame chairs with these leather strap kind of things over the top. So I thought we could kind of marry those ideas together using thrifted and gifted leather. We'll get to that later. There are two projects on my channel that walked so that this project could fly. One is the headboard pad that's on my bed. You may remember that I didn't love the shape of the curve on the back of my headboard, so I made a headboard pad to cover that up that's strapped right to the sides. And the second project was this little short that I made when I was doing a collaboration with Goodwill. I found this $4 chair and this $4 handbag and put the two together into this really cool strappy chair. I still have that in my house. I'm not really sure what to do with it. I don't really have a good space for it, but I can't bear to part with it, so maybe you want it, let me know in the comments. But yeah, essentially I was envisioning this chair being totally stripped down and raw, and then being recovered with pieces of the leather jacket that were kind of strapped and buckled and corseted onto this chair to give it the upholstered look. You with me so far? Maybe we're hearing some red flags as to why this project took me so long. But one of the things that helped me push this project across the finish line were some tips that I picked up in an upholstery class on Craftsy, which is the sponsor of today's video. Craftsy is your online resource for all things creative, with classes in art, sewing, cooking, baking, and so much more. Whether you need to pick up some specific skills and tips to finish an unfinished project like me with my leather chair, or if you just want to enjoy a fun new hobby, Craftsy is the perfect place to get started. I just got back from vacation in Japan and I was so inspired and intrigued by the cooking techniques there, so I decided to take a class in Japanese cooking fundamentals on Craftsy, and it's been teaching me so many interesting things. I love that nothing is wasted in the Japanese kitchen. The instructor will like make a broth with some things and then strain it and then use those things for something else. It just feels very on brand for Reissued. I love it. Craftsy teaches through instructional videos taught by professional instructors who give step-by-step demonstrations, which I find especially important for cooking because I need all the help I can get when it comes to the kitchen. The first 1,000 people to click the link in the video description will receive a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for $1.49. For new members only. You know I'm a bargain hunter, and that's definitely a bargain, so go click the link and get started today. Okay, so let's all time travel back to 2022 when I found this chair on the street, and I'll talk you through the process here. The first thing I needed to do was remove all of the old dirty fabric and padding so that we have bare bones to work with. I wasn't really sure what was going on underneath the frame, so let's find out, shall we? As always, this was a process that I thought might take a couple hours that took way longer. And it didn't help that I started this in the dead of summer. Check out the pre-makeover front porch. The front door is quite a look. So we have reached the process where I may or may not have bitten off more than I can chew with this one. It is clear to me upon taking it apart that the skeleton of the chair was constructed just for it to be covered. So everything is kind of like, oh, don't worry about it. You'll never see it. There'll be fabric over it. So my dreams of having this be like a really raw skeletal piece are compromised, to say the least. But I have some ideas in mind. I still have hope for this one. I'm going to clean up everything now. I'm just going to go ahead and toss all of the upholstery. I don't even think it would be helpful to me to use as a pattern because I think I'm going to make significant enough changes that it wouldn't really be the same. And then I'm just going to hold on to all the batting, I think, because I may or may not need that for the arms and the back of the chair. So I'd rather really not throw a lot of money at an experiment. So far it's free, so no problems. It's going to be great. Also, I found a $1 gold coin in the chair, so in a reissued first, I actually have made money on this project so far, and it's not even done. Wild. Are you so needy? What do you need? Can you down? Can you roll over? Oh, yeah. Good girl. In the dead of winter, I opted to resume the chair stripping process. A flathead screwdriver is a good way to lift out upholstery nails and staples, with the assistance of pliers from time to time. I learned in my craftsy upholstery class that there's a dedicated tool for this that would have made this so much easier, but I didn't know that at the time and I was working with what I had. So if you think you're going to be pulling a lot of staples, go ahead and get one of those tools and save yourself the time and trouble. This process was definitely tedious. I'm not just trying to remove all the fabric, but I want to remove every little nail and staple to get the frame looking as clean as possible. Okay, so I think I've deconstructed the chair as much as I want to for now. I think the next step is to go and sort of analyze my leather pieces and start to take them apart and see how I would have placed them on the chair. Plus, it's kind of like a stormy, overcast day, so it seems like a nice day for sitting down and watching a show and seam ripping. And then once I place my pieces a little bit more and know which areas of wood are going to be exposed and where I'm going to upholster, I can really start to finish up the prep on the chair. I was feeling reinvigorated to start this project after finding this leather jacket at Goodwill for $35. Would I love to wear this? 100%. Was it too big for me? 100%. So since it didn't fit, why not take it apart and put it on a chair? I thought that the buckle details, quilted areas, and ribbed panels would be so perfect for the look that I wanted on this chair. I also had this other thrifted leather jacket on hand as well, so I ripped them both up. And I didn't film it. I felt like at that time I was seam ripping so often on my channel. I was sewing a lot more then, so I felt like I showed that all the time. But don't worry, we'll see lots more of that later. So I seam ripped these apart and started feeling overwhelmed again. So another time jump. This time I felt I really had all the pieces in place to finish off this project, despite my entire studio being taken apart for the ceiling lift. So yeah, my house was even more chaotic than usual, and yet this chair was still buried in the mix in its unfinished state. Alright, so over a year that this has been in process, and this is how we're looking today. Alright, so this is more or less how we're looking today. I still have a few little staples and nails and things to pull, but we're mostly stripped down. So as I was working on stripping down this chair, it's very evident this is pretty low-grade wood, and it's a pretty, rough shape. It's not, really well carved or anything because it was intended to be covered up by fabric. So going into this, I am trying to embrace that and just let things be kind of rough and deconstructed as opposed to hoping for this perfect wood frame. I have seen various chairs over the last year working at the REISSUED that have come in that might have been better constructed. Things that are a little bit older that have more carved legs might be better. Whereas this is a more recent piece, so it probably had a cheaper factory construction. But for what I need and for it being free, I just decided that it would be best to make it work. And so we're just going to go with all those little imperfections and clean it up the best we can. But there's only so much that you can do. However, for things like the arms, for example, I don't think that this double piece is very attractive. It just looks really raw. So we're going to aim to cover that up with something. Same along the back. I think it'll be better to have something come up and over the back. Same here down along the front. I think we're going to try to have a panel in to cover all this up as well. So as we move forward, I just want to be really strategic about where I'm placing the leather to cover up the worst areas, but then also to let some of that rawness be exposed and create the look, right? Added to my materials arsenal were these thrifted leather boots from Goodwill and a bunch of foam and batting from the sleeper sofa that I thrifted from the REISSUED store. I took that apart completely to use the pull-out mechanism for my studio and then maybe for the living room. I ended up getting rid of the sleeper sofa entirely because I didn't think that I had a space for it. Now, I think it might have worked for Matt's office since we want a bed in that space as well. This is why I don't get rid of anything ever, but it is what it is, and we got some padding out of it. Since it's been a minute since I deconstructed a thrifted garment for parts, I'll remind you that I prefer to tear out the seams rather than cutting apart the fabric to keep that extra little bit of seam allowance. You never know when you'll need that. Plus, the existing seam lines and folds can be really helpful to use for reconstruction, especially with fabrics like denim and leather that are thick and want to really hold on to their folds. With a lot of the pieces that I needed in place, I started exploring placing them on the chair. This is the fun part, honestly. It's like a puzzle. All the buckles and closures will be a key part of strapping the upholstered elements to the chair, so I ended up pulling most of them off and moving them around to give me lots of attachment points to work with. I pulled these buckles off of the bottom of the jacket, and I think I'm going to reattach them over here on the side, wrapping around, so it secures the back piece and holds it tight, and also has that nice buckle detail showing. Here at the front, I think this rib detail can stretch out a little bit and come all the way over the sides. And then I'll fill in with a panel of leather from the other jacket here in the back. I think that looked nice here for the seat. And then this other piece that used to be on the back of the jacket, I'm gonna put right in here as kind of like a front panel. It has a little bit of padding and that detail that ties into the rest of the chair. So I think that will be really nice here at the front. So on the sleeve, I'm planning to leave this part zipped open. I was thinking I was gonna zip it closed, but then you get this weird like fold on the front. So if it's zipped open, it goes right along there. Then once we get back here, I split open this seam to allow it to go on either side. And then I have one of the shoe buckles here that I think might be able to secure that together. So I'll catch up with you guys once I have those pieces in place and we can take a look at how it's all gonna come together. With some placements in mind, we need to perfect the frame of the chair as much as possible. That meant finishing all the staple and nail removal off camera, and then sanding down the whole frame a bit to smooth things out and to remove the finish on the legs. We want the whole piece to be one color. There were also a couple places where the screws came through weirdly, so my dad repositioned the screws to make it look a little cleaner. Again, we're embracing an elegantly trashed, deconstructed look, so I'm just trying to minimize elements that look like mistakes rather than exposed construction, if that makes sense. I apply a dark tinted paste wax to the whole piece. This is very sheer over the wood, but looks dark in all the cracks and holes. Again, I want this to look natural but purposeful and feel smooth to the touch. So for the finish on this, I'm opting to use a tinted paste wax rather than a stain. I worry that if I try to stain this, it would make it look like it was trying to be something that it's not. And with how raw it still looks, this is never going to be perfect. So I just think that staining is not the right call. So we're going to go in with the tinted paste wax. It's going to be mostly clear, but just a little bit of depth. And hopefully that'll give it a more finished look, but still that raw look. With the frame ready to go, my mom and I started to apply some foam from the old sleeper sofa to the arms of the chair. Even though it had been my intention to use separate sewn elements strapped to the chair rather than straight up upholstering, adding some padding directly to the chair will give our sewn structure something to lay on top of and ensure that the parts of the chair that we don't want to see are covered. The black fabric here is a lining from one of the jackets, so no extra cost there. To apply the foam and fabric, we staple it backwards at the front of the arm so that our staples won't be visible when the fabric is pulled back in place. Then we insert more foam and staple the fabric together under the arm where it won't be visible. Meanwhile, studio renovation was underway this same day. Alright, so I've been procrastinating on the sewing process because it's always scary to get started on this. It's just overwhelming. There's so many different pieces and things that have to fit together to make this work. So I think we're going to start on the bottom piece. There's kind of 4 different pieces that are going to be working over this. The first piece is this here in the center that's like a lining, and it's going to have 4 sections that come off of it to kind of cover the sides that will be leather. The second piece is going to be this sleeve thing that's going to wrap all the way around the back to the other sleeve. Third piece is going to be the back piece that has some cushioning and then goes over the back. And then the last piece will be the cushion that sits on here that's going to be its own little like bag essentially. So we're just gonna start on that bottom piece first to be able to wrap this and sort of create a base that everything else will go on top of. First, I know I need to piece together a couple different pieces of leather to make the front panel work. I use sewing clips whenever possible, since pins are impossible to use with leather and leave extra holes that we don't want. Before we figure out the details on the front, my mom and I go ahead and make a plan for the sides and back. The sides will be the front panels from the second jacket with the zipper still in along the bottom for a nice clean edge. I top stitch this to the center piece since the shape is kind of weird and we won't see anything under the cushion anyway. The back piece will be the yoke from the second jacket. Once I top stitch that in place, we can get a sense of the fit. Looks good so far. To attach the front padded panel, I use leather glue to get the placement right and hold it in place for sewing, since pinning is not an option. I learned this tip in the comment section on my leather jumpsuit video ages ago. Once the glue is dry, I could theoretically sew along the seam to lock things in. I say theoretically because this is where things started to go wrong. As in, my machine was not having it. I struggled to get this seam done, and for attaching the little side strips, I switched over to my mom's old machine that she learned to sew on, with some success, and then a lot of this.
He doesn't want to feed on this foam at all.
No, the foam is really sticky. But after some serious struggles and no help from Queenie, we were able to place the completed bottom piece and staple it under the bottom to hold it in place. As we stapled, we added foam and batting wherever necessary to make the fabric taut. And with that, the base structure is done. Now onto the back piece. The first step here is to fill in the neck hole from the main jacket, so I glued a piece in place behind, turning the raw edge under to make things look clean. Once it dried, I cut off the excess and then painstakingly sewed it in to secure it. I had to keep stopping because the needle was getting caught or stuck and shredding the thread, the same problem I had on my machine. And still, we trudged onward. I clipped the old lining right sides together with the front panel to create a kind of pocket for our back padding to sit into. I think this is the point where I broke my mom's machine entirely. Don't worry, it's fixed now, but it was definitely out of commission for this project. So back to trying my machine again. At this point, we were trying to turn the back panel under at the top and staple it at the back to get a clean edge without any back panel, but it just wasn't working. Welcome back to Reissued, where we sew through 8,000 layers of leather on the most delicate and temperamental sewing machine known to man. Yeah, today was so frustrating. I sewed about 5 seams, and it took all day. We got some of the pieces attached on the chair, and everything's looking really good. Again, I continue to be really excited about this project because I think it's going to look amazing, but it's just apparently going to be torture every step of the way getting there. So hang in there with me. We're almost done. I'm just feeling the time crunch and the pressure, and I'm tired. So hopefully we'll be done soon. Hello again from the present day. I did pick up this project again for a hot minute last autumn. I thought I would finally push the video out then, and then just before my Japan trip, I was going to try to get it done before I left. But the timeline on this video is already so complicated, so we'll just pretend that all the things that I shot in October and November and January are present day, just so I can keep everything straight in my head and break down the steps for this next section. So aside from my new craftsy skills, there are 2 big changes that helped me take this across the finish line. First, I got a new sewing machine. A little research and some comments from y'all landed me on the Singer Heavy Duty. This one also came with a walking foot that should help the leather slide more effectively. So let's hope that this is heavy duty enough for my needs. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. And I'll go ahead and note here that even though the walking foot was helpful, I often did not end up using it because when I used the machine for other projects, I was so afraid to unthread it and rethread it or make any changes. I just wanted to keep it working. But also the issues I was having had less to do with the fabric feeding through the machine and more to do with the needle actually puncturing through. I was using leather needles for this. I know that I was asking them to do the work of a very heavy duty industrial machine for this kind of upholstery work and this thick leather, so it is what it is. The second big change that helped me finish this project were some additional leather pieces that I got. There's a customer that comes into the REISSUED, Betty, and she started watching my channel, and then she's like, Andrew, I have some leather pieces for you that you can use for that chair project. I think she saw it in one of the house tour videos maybe. And so I picked up some awesome pieces for her, and you'll see that a couple of those made it into the finished chair and were those crucial puzzle pieces to finish this off. So let's get back to work. Let's pick up where we left off and fix the back piece. These leather pants from Betty should be a perfect solution to carry over the top of the chair and become a full back panel. So I ripped off the front of the pants at the seams to see what we're working with. I thought that I could attach the waistband to the buckles from the jacket for a seamless look, but that seemed kind of clunky, so why not use the waistband for the buckles? Amazing. Now I can measure from the side seams and sew the legs together in a straight line to become the center back seam for the chair. This took a little fine tuning later off camera since the pants were stretched a bit in the rear. Then I open up the waistband and glue this to our existing chair back piece. Now to lock this in with the seam, and I knew right away that my machine was not going to be able to handle this, so this is where we switched to sewing by hand. Oh my god, this was so awful and time consuming. I ended up doing way more hand sewing than I wanted on this project. Sewing leather by hand is possible, but it's tricky. Shout out to my mom with helping with a lot of this, and shout out to House Hunters for being the background noise that I needed in this last week of hand sewing. It's always funny to hear buyers complaining about having to paint a room, and here I am making my fingers bleed to sew a stupid chair for my living room. I don't know. Next, I attached the other end of the buckles. Ideally, I would have just sewn these right into the seam, but I knew my machine couldn't handle this many layers of leather, so I sewed through the existing holes by hand to lock these in. We want to be able to pull the buckles really tight, so this seam needs to be strong. And now I can stitch up the side seams with the leather to the lining fabric so that I have that kind of pillowcase for my back padding. After making a hole to add our buckles, we can try this on the chair. My mom and I add some of the sofa foam and this old pillow to pad out the back. The pants part will drape down the back and be stapled under the bottom of the chair, and the buckles can be secured around the side to hold the backrest in place. We ended up cutting the excess off the bottom of the pants and creating another panel that can be stapled in to hold the bottom of the backrest area down. Now let's hand stitch all the lining elements in place to keep them from moving around once they're on the chair. And with that, the back piece is done. 2 pieces down, 2 more to go. For the chair cushion, my dad helped me cut down the foam cushion from the sleeper sofa using an electric knife. It didn't love cutting through the batting, but it worked great for the foam. I had to borrow a bit of the other cushion for added length, and we attached the 2 pieces together with spray adhesive. The cushion cover was a hodgepodge of different pieces, the back piece from the original jacket with the cool rib detail that I thought would go along the front, plus an additional panel from the other jacket for the seat, and the fronts from the pants legs for the side panels. I used the cover from the sleeper sofa to make a pattern for the sides to match the original curve that will go along the front. Since my seat panels weren't quite wide enough, I added a strip from a trench coat belt that I had in my leather stock box to get the width I needed. I first sewed the strip along the curve in the front since I knew that would be the hardest thing to sew on the machine and it would be more manageable that way. Then I attached the center panel to the strip. And then I continued sewing my side panel to the strip, curving it around to the back. After realizing that my side panels were too short to meet in the back, I improvised and added an extra piece of the trench coat belt. To create the bottom panel, I cut down one of the quilted jacket linings to the right shape and sewed it along the front and sides. After stuffing the foam into our new pillowcase, my mom helped me out by hand stitching the back closed and using some creative folding to make up for the fact that I made the case a little bit too long. And we glued the corners to keep things looking decent. Another piece done. For the arms, I decided that I needed to line the sleeves to finish off some of the raw edges and create clean seams for our straps to insert into. So I used the old lining from the leather sleeves, sewing it right sides together with the leather and cutting a channel along where I opened up the seam to fit around the chair. Once I sew along those lines as well, I can turn everything right side out. The lining will ensure that we don't see any raw edges on the chair, and these ended up acting as a nice pocket for the foam and cardboard that we need to add inside later. With the shape in place, it was back to hand sewing to attach the straps. This leather was some of the thickest yet, so I opted to poke some holes in the leather with this leather punch thing that I found on Amazon to help me get the needle through. It was best to poke each individual hole just before I pushed the needle through from the same side that I was going to push the needle through, instead of poking multiple holes at once, since it was hard to keep all the holes and all the layers perfectly aligned. One way or another, I got all the straps attached and ready to put on the chair.
Okay, so after many months and years of work, all of the pieces are finally done. We are finally going to assemble this today and be able to see everything all together. So even though I am absolutely exhausted, I've been working on this pretty nonstop for the last couple of days. I'm just really excited to see this come together, all of the pieces on the chair at the same time. This one's been in my head and on my to-do list for a long time, so knocking this out and seeing it in real life is going to be incredible. Let's put this together and take it across the finish line.
We started with the back piece, strapping the upper straps around the back. Then we pushed the front flap through to the back and stapled from the back to hold things tight on the front side. And finally, we pulled the back panel down and stretched it evenly, channeling my Craft C instructor, before stapling it in along the bottom. Now onto the arms. This was the toughest piece to design since it required tension from many angles, so it was difficult for me to know exactly how this was going to sit on the finished piece. And so after getting it in place and held by all three of us, it became apparent that we needed to add some structure in the sides to make up for the lack of tension in certain areas. After getting one side done with tons of trial and error off camera, here's what ended up working. I prepped the piece by inserting 2 layers of foam and a large strip of cardboard underneath on the outside edge, and a smaller strip of cardboard wrapped in batting on the inside edge. The cardboard gives added structure, and the foam and batting smooth out the hard edges and offer fullness. We tried using decorative furniture tacks we had on hand to create the invisible attachment points from the inside, but they were absolute crap and kept folding over, so we decided to go with some discrete staple placements instead. After a couple more staples at some key points, we can see our straps in action. And with a few finishing touches, our chair is finally complete. All right, everybody. Thank you for taking this crazy journey with me. I can't wait to show you the finished chair. I guess the big question here at the finish is, was it worth it? I really like how the chair turned out. I really like this aesthetic. I know it's not for everybody with the like raw, exposed, deconstructed kind of look, but I think it's kind of fun and edgy and meta, so I really like it. I think this is a piece that will look better over time as it's sat in, when everything kind of squishes together and settles into its new shape. Leather is pretty moldable, so I think it'll look better after it has a little bit of time to take this new shape. I also think after sitting in the chair that I wish there was a higher back on it. I think it would be cool to add one of those like neck roll sort of things, you know, when they like strap to the back of the chair. I'm not going to do that now because I need this project to be done, but if I feel crazy at some point and want to add something else to the chair, I think there might be a way to add some kind of neck piece that can strap down to the wings of the chair, just because when you're sitting down, I feel like my head doesn't really have a place to go. So if I'm being really critical, of course I can find things that could be better, but overall, I'm really happy and proud of myself with what I did on this project. I think there are certain projects where you feel you kind of stepped up a level. When I was sewing those curved edges of the cushion cover for the bottom cushion, I just felt like, wow, my sewing skills are good. Maybe I could straight up upholster a piece now. I don't know. So yeah, be sure to let me know in the comments how you feel about the finished chair. And was it worth it? I am going to shoot the after out on the front porch because it feels like this chair will have come full circle. Plus, this is going to go in the living room, which is a complete disaster right now, but it's getting ready to be better. We're about to launch into the living room makeover. This is the first part of that, I guess you could say. So if you want to follow along with my living room makeover, be sure that you're subscribed. If you like this video, be sure to like this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon.